with Cajun Cardboard, coming at you from the great state of Louisiana with a little video. Sometimes I sort of take for granted that the people that view the show put in an inordinate amount of time to master some of the stuff I talk about, and I sort of just kind of talk through stuff without necessarily explaining it. So this is going to kind of be a video for those who are relatively new to the hobby, or maybe those who aren't super familiar with Beckett Grading, which is, BGS grading, Beckett Grading Services. People are familiar with PSA, there's Beckett, there's SGC, there's HGA, there's CSG, there's a million other different grading companies out there. But today I just kind of wanted to do a little quick tutorial video on BGS grading, Beckett grading. I have no dog in this hunt. Do I collect BGS cards? Yes. But I also collect PSA cards, and I have a few SGC cards and a couple CSG cards that I'm going to crack and turn into PSA cards soon as well. But specifically today, I just kind of wanted to talk about BGS 9.5s and BGS 10s, how Beckett arrives at those grades from a mathematical calculation standpoint, and then show you guys some examples of cards in the different types of grades, because not all 9.5s are the same, right? There's all sorts of different BGS 9.5s out there, and that can oftentimes cause confusion for people that are new to the hobby. Trying to understand comps and trying to comp one 9.5 against another is not necessarily apples to apples. Sometimes it's apples to, tricycles. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of disparity between different subgrades, especially when you start talking about monster cards where a half grade and a subgrade could mean sometimes 5 figures, 6 figures difference. I know that sounds crazy, especially for that much value to hinge on one or two opinions of one human being who's looking at your card and slapping a number on it. But again, let me just switch you over. I'm going to switch you over. So I'm on the Beckett website. I wanted to show you guys this. If you go into their grading section, you can go into grading FAQs, frequently asked questions, and then the very first top line under About Beckett Grading is how final grades are determined. So this is what I first wanted to talk about. You see this a lot in Facebook groups. People ask the question, well, I don't understand why I got a BGS 9. I should have got a BGS 9.5. Or people think they should have got a 9.5, but they got a 9 on their card. The one thing I can tell you for certainty, and again, I am not, Dr. James Beckett, but I know how to read, and I've been doing this for a long time. The one thing I can tell you is it is not simply an average of the 4 subgrades and then you round up or down. It doesn't work that way. And Beckett doesn't go into crazy detail, and there's a little more to it because even within subgrades, not all subgrades are treated the same as far as how much they can be pulled up or down. But there are 2 examples on here that Beckett has, and this is the first example. The overall numerical grade, and I'm going to read a little bit, so bear with me. This is how we do it. The overall numerical grade is not a simple average of the 4 report card grades, as I just explained. Beckett Grading Services uses an algorithm which determines the final grade using the 4 subgrades on the front label of the card holder. The lowest overall grade is the first category to observe because it is the most obvious defect, meaning that is the thing that is the most wrong with the card. Whatever category, centering, corners, edges, or surface, whichever of those has the lowest numerical grade on your BGS slab, that is the primary defect, or what they're calling, the most obvious defect. And the lowest grade is weighted the most heavily in their algorithm when determining the overall grade. So, for example, they give you a card with 9.5, 9.5, 9, and 8. So they don't just add those up. It's not just 36 divided by 4 equals 9. It doesn't work that way. That adds up to 30. That's quick Cajun math, you got to admit. It doesn't equal 9. It equals 8.5. And the reason behind that is it received an 8 in the surface. So that subgrade is going to be weighted the most heavily. The 9.5, the 9.5, and the 9 is only going to pull that up to an 8.5. Okay, and as they say, the surface grade was an 8 overall, the lowest grade, so the most obvious defect. The 9.5 grades on centering and corners were strong enough to bring it up a full point, which I think is a typo. It was actually enough to bring it up a half point to reach the 8.5 level. So that card would be an 8.5 with those subgrades that you see in that example number 1. Example number 2, along the same lines, but a little bit different, 9.5, 9.5 on the first 2, just like in the first example, and then an 8.5 for edges and then a 9 for surface. This card can be pulled up to a 9. So even when you add those up, you come up with, what is that, 36.5. This one gets up to a 9, not because you simply averaged the 4 subgrades. Again, it doesn't work that way. It may appear this card should have received a different grade, but it didn't. And the highest it can receive is 0.5 higher than the lowest subgrade. So the lowest subgrade on here is edges, 8.5. So 9.5, 9.5, and 9 can bring those edges up from an 8.5 to an overall of a 9. And it says the edges were the lowest in this case. Hence, the card received the overall 9 grade. Even though centering and corners received grades of 9.5, a key point to remember is that the minimum requirement to receive a grade of Gem Mint is to have at least 3 grades of 9.5. So for you to get an overall BGS 9.5 overall grade, 3 of the subgrades absolutely must. It is a prerequisite. They must be 9.5s in order to achieve that grade. And the 4th can be no less than a 9. What they just described is what I call a min gem or a minimum gem. A lot of people in the hobby describe it as a minimum gem. And please note, BGS makes a note on here, the final grade rarely, if ever, which is, to me, a disparity. It's either rarely or never. I don't know what if ever really adds to the equation, but it rarely exceeds 2 levels above, meaning 2 half grades above the lowest of the 4 subgrades. For example, if a characteristic card had a 10, a 6, a 10, and a 10, the final grade will be a 7. That is exactly 2 half grades above the lowest, right? So you pull, the 10s would pull the 6 up to a 6.5 and then pull it up 1 more to a 7, and that's all you're getting. You're not going to get a 9, you're not going to get an 8, and there's no I guess, opinion there. It is per se the highest it's going to pull it up is 2 half grades or 1 full grade from the lowest subgrade in that situation. So there you go. I just wanted to talk about that real quick as far as how Beckett arrives at the overall grade. Now I'm going to show you a couple of cards from my PWCC vault and the different types of names that we give to these cards. So first I want to show you is a card that I pulled from a pack that I'm super proud of, right? This is my Dwayne Wade Black Refractor from 2003 Topps Chrome. I pulled this card in 2003 with my good friends back when I lived in Houston, Texas, and you can tell the slab's cloudy, it's old. I mean, it doesn't even look great, right? The PWCC does great pictures, but you can only do so much with a 20-year-old slab. So this is an original slab. This is what the Beckett labels looked like back then. And so you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, well, where's my subgrades? There's no subgrades. Well, those subgrades are on the back, and there they are. So you can see these subgrades are a 9.5, 9.5, 9.5, and a 9 for centering. So this is what me and many others in the hobby would call a minimum gem for BGS. We call it a gem because of this word right here, Gem Mint. And then we call it a minimum gem because it has a subgrade of a 9 in there. And so that makes it a minimum gem. And remember, you have to have 3 9.5s in order to have an overall 9.5. And so this is what minimum gem cards look like, 3 9.5s and a 9. Let's move on to the next card. So that's what we call the minimum gem. I pulled this card because I wanted to show you that originally the Beckett subgrades were on the back. So when you see a card that has a Beckett label and it says only an overall grade on the front, you have to ask 2 questions. Is it an old label? And let me look at the back. Or is it a new Beckett where you can opt out of subgrades to save a few bucks, which I highly advise against. That never ever works out from a secondary market value standpoint. That's the one piece of advice I'll give you is it is definitely almost never worth saving a few bucks on eliminating subgrades and getting just a BGS overall grade. For whatever reason, the hobby has spoken. They do not like it. The secondary market does not like it when you have a Beckett slab with no subgrade. So I would advise against it. I personally don't do it. That's just my opinion. If you disagree with me, you're welcome to put that in the comments, but I think there's a lot of evidence and indicia out there that would indicate I'm on the right side on that opinion. So here's what we're looking at. Is we've got a nice little Luka Doncic Prism Fast Break Blue. This is what we would call a quad or a true gem, right? Those terms are synonymous. They're interchangeable. We call it a quad gem, quad meaning 4, and gem meaning 9.5. There are 4 9.5 subgrades. So that is what we would call a quad gem or a true gem. And it's true because it's 9.5 every direction you go for every subgrade. None higher, none lower. So that would be a quad gem or a true gem. The next one I've got is an example of what I was telling you. I didn't grade this card, so don't shoot the messenger. I picked it up crazy cheap, and let me tell you why. Because on the back, there are no subgrades, and we knew it wasn't going to be an old Beckett grading label anyway, because Luka Doncic is too recent, but there are no subgrades on this card. And this is a relatively meaningful Luka Doncic rookie card. I love the product Revolution, and it's serial number to 88, as you can see down here on the bottom. I picked it up at a crazy discount price simply because the person that did submit this to Beckett and the person that was selling it opted not to put subgrades on here. If this card had subgrades, even minimum gem subgrades, it would have been worth more than no subgrades. And so this is probably a candidate to crack, or either really it's probably a candidate to just send back to BGS and say, I want subgrades, give me the subgrades. And so whatever, price that is or whatever category, it may or may not be worth it. I have not looked at the numbers, but I wanted to show you an example of what I said. You can find discounts on cards like this if they're in BGS 9.5 slabs and they do not have subgrades. And so there's a good example of that with that Luka Doncic Emerald parallel for the Chinese New Year rookie card. Next is what we call a BGS 10, right? So this is simple. Every single gold BGS 10 label is going to have these exact subgrades. Now, they don't have to be, 10s in these particular subgrades, but it needs to be 3 10s and a 9.5. That's how you get a BGS 10. And I've got here pulled up, my Sam Cassell special here, Sam Cassell Ghost card. I didn't buy it because of Sam Cassell. I bought it because of Jordan on the front and Kobe on the back, as you can see. But this is a cool refractor from the 90s. It's that mystery finest refractor with Jordan and Kobe. This is a BGS 10, and I've actually got the East-West and BGS 10 because guys, I like pairings. So BGS gold label BGS 10s look like this. 10, 10, 10, 9.5 in one category or another. It doesn't necessarily need to be a specific subgrade to get that BGS 10 label. So that's a BGS 10 label. Next, we've got a BGS 9.5. I call this a Gem Plus, okay? Some people call it other names. I call it a Gem Plus. But there's going to be a little bit more to the story that I'm about to explain to you in just a second. So it's called a Gem Plus because it's a little bit better than a true gem or a quad gem. Remember, we looked at that fast break Doncic, Prism, blue fast break Doncic, which was a true gem or a quad gem. It was a 9.5 in every subgrade. This is a 9.5 in 3, but it's better than a 9.5 in one of the subgrades. So we call it a Gem Plus. That gives a little bit of extra value in the open market because it's a half grade better than a true gem. And it's a full, 1.0 better than a minimum gem, which would have a 9 subgrade. So that's what a Gem Plus looks like. But there are, here, we'll kind of skip through this real quick. This is real easy to explain. If you get a 10 in every subcategory, you get a black label. I love this card. I picked it up at a great price. And I really love 2013 Prism, as you guys know, because I talk about it all the time. But that's what a black label looks like. It's about to change, it sounds like. I think Beckett has now released their new labels. And so black labels actually look different now. But this is what a black label looks like. It looks similar enough to the new label that Beckett created where it's unmistakable. A black label requires 4 BGS 10 subgrades. So it is a card that they have deemed absolutely perfect in every way, centering edges, corners, and surface. So that's what a black label looks like. Remember, we talked about a quad gem, that the Doncic we looked at, 9.5 times 4. Quad gem, true gem, whatever. This is an example of a minimum gem, okay? An 86 Fleer Jordan with a minimum gem, meaning it has a 9 in one of the 4 categories. So 3 9.5s and a 9. It can be any of the categories in any combination, but if it's 3 9.5s and a 9, it's a BGS 9.5 overall. That's the only way it's going to get a BGS 9.5 overall overall with a 9. It's got to have 3 9.5 subgrades to get the 9.5 overall. As you can see, this Jordan did get that. That's a nice looking clean copy of a 9.5. And so last one here. So this is another example of a Gem Plus, but it's different than the one we looked at before, because if you'll notice, look up here at this label, it's got 2 10s. And so it's a half grade, a half subgrade away from a BGS 10 overall, right? 10, 10, 10, 9.5 would be a BGS 10. But this is a Gem Plus. But I call it, and I wish there was a better name. Maybe there is a better phrase for this, or maybe I just don't know the vernacular, but I call this a Gem Plus Plus, which means it's a true gem plus a 10 plus another 10. So we call it I call it a Gem Plus Plus. That's just my manner of speaking. I don't know if that's right or wrong or what. And then lastly, this is a phrase that I use. I don't know if other people use it. I call it a mixed gem. And the reason I call it a mixed gem is because it's got a Gem Plus feature. As you can see, it's got 110 subcategory, but it's also got a minimum gem or a mint surface of a 9 subgrade. So it's kind of a mixed gem. So this is one where you really are getting a numerical average, right? So you're a little bit better in edges than a Gem Mint, and you're a little bit worse in surface than a Gem Mint. And so I call this a mixed gem. In my opinion, and I think most would agree, a mixed gem is more valuable than a minimum gem. I think the market has borne out that a mixed gem is not as valuable as a true gem or a quad gem for whatever reason. Even though when you add up the subs and divide it, it comes out to 9.5, it comes out to 38 or whatever. No matter what, people still, they don't. I think that they like the quad gem or the true gem more than one of these mixed gems that you're looking at with 110 sub and 19 sub. And so that's kind of it, guys. I just wanted to show you all the different variations of the Beckett grading system. Nothing special here, but too often I guess I get caught up in talking about high-end stuff or taking terms and definitions and slang and things like that for granted. There's a million zillion abbreviations in the hobby. There's as you can see, there's like, what did we look at? Like 7, how many different variations of freaking Beckett grades do we just look at? How many cards are in this? Look at all the different types of Beckett cards out there. These are all 9.5s or 10s. That's not even getting into 8.5s and 9s and things like that. And it's also not even looking at autograph grades. And so anyway, just wanted to put this helpful video out there. Hopefully you guys liked it. If I missed anything or if I got anything wrong, please correct me in the comments. And if I skipped over anything that you think would be helpful to some of the newer entrants into the hobby that are watching this channel, please let me know and put it in the comments, because we're all learning this thing together. I like Beckett. I like Beckett slabs. They were my first love. I've since kind of transitioned over to PSA simply because of the margins in the secondary market and because of the money back guarantee in the event of an inauthentic card. PSA has a history of taking care of people when they have cards in authentic PSA slabs, but the card itself is not authentic. And in other words, oops, we made a mistake. Take fair market value for your card, give it back to us, and you're covered. For that reason, I've kind of transitioned over to PSA. That and the money. I mean, honestly, just the ability to flip and make a lot more money on PSA cards compared to BGS is another reason. But I like BGS. A lot of my 90s grails and inserts that I have or I am looking to acquire are in Beckett slabs. And so I thought maybe this video would be a helpful little tutorial for you guys who are brand new to the hobby. Again, if you've been in this hobby forever, you're probably telling me to shut up and you're ready to move on to the next video. But if you're new to it, maybe this gives you a little bit better understanding and frame of reference of how Beckett arrives at its 9.5 grade, and then what the different types of 9.5 grades are out there. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Keep collecting. Stay positive in the hobby, and peace.